case of, by statute, the district attorney is responsible for any kind of death in the county. So if an individual is found unattended, let's say someone is found in a parking lot someplace, then the state police would work with the Walpole police and they would determine whether or not it's an accident or it's a homicide. And then we also do get homicides. We've had a couple more recently. There was one 3 weeks ago in Quincy that's actively being worked on. And so the troopers actually are trained and they rely on crime scene services and other investigative means. And they tell me I'm being filmed today. So everybody has a cell phone and most of you take pictures. And so there's a lot of work that they, when they go to a scene, they look around for cameras. People have Ring doorbells, and so we have a lot of evidence gathering, plus the old-fashioned methods of talking to people, fingerprints, blood spatter that you would expect. So in the case of a death, then we would have control, meaning the district attorney and the state police are my designee. But other than that, I work closely with like the Walpole and the local police in any other matter. So, and we provide resources to them when they need it because they don't have a crime scene service. So if they have a complicated rape case, a home invasion, or something like that, they might call up and ask for assistance from the state police and we would get it for them, but they would run the case. So 65 attorneys in the office. I'd say kind of half of them work in the district court, the other half handle superior court cases. Anybody been on a grand jury? So the grand jury sits for 3 months at a time, 3 days a week, and so it could be worse. It could be on the federal grand jury. That's a year and a half, 1 to 4 days a week. So, so basically, cases get arraigned in the district court, and serious cases go to the superior court. So, robberies, armed robberies, attempted murders, some of the motor vehicle homicides, and obviously the murder cases. But they have to go through the grand jury first. And they determine whether or not there's sufficient cause to move it to the superior court, and at some point a jury of 12 people will decide whether or not someone's guilty or innocent. And so one of the things that happened during COVID, the heyday of COVID, if you take a look, and some of you are familiar with the courts in Norfolk County, the newest court in Norfolk County is Quincy District Court, and that was built in 1970. And it is functionally obsolete, and even that's the newest court. Our oldest court happens to be older than all of us together in the room. It's Dedham Superior Court. I think it was built in 1815. And 100 years ago, they tried Sacco and Vanzetti. Those of you that may be familiar with that was tried in the Superior Court. And the Superior Court is a nice old building, and it's historic, and it looks great, but it is a very difficult place to try a case because of the acoustics. And if you think about it now, okay, COVID was here, we wouldn't be sitting like this. And so a jury of 12 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 2 alternates, because you need 4 alternates during COVID. So the first 2 rows, I have enough people for a jury in the Superior Court, except in the COVID, you had to be 6 feet apart and 6 feet between you. And if you think of the courtroom, it was impossible to do that. So those of you that may be my age and were fortunate enough that either got married or went to a prom at the Lombardo's, which were the old days with the Chateau de Ville, they rented that for a period of months just so we could try to have some trials. We had no murder trials. No one would take us up on the offer, but we did have a number of motor vehicle homicides. And what kills people in Norfolk County? Drug overdoses. And during the heyday, we were losing about 3 people a week. So the state police would have to come out if there was an overdose in Walpole or Quincy. They would come out and they would make sure, that it really was an overdose, because sometimes different things happen. So, or if they discovered when they would go to a scene like that, they would take the person's phone, and we have the capacity to download the phone. And usually it would lead you to information on who may have provided the drugs, and that would start an investigation with the local and the state police as to who was doing that. But we have community coalitions that families and friends, your neighbors that are here in this community that have a very active community coalition. And in Walpole, which they use to educate, they're probably on the local cable, they're in the schools, I'm sure they've probably even been in here to talk to seniors. So we extended, during my tenure as district attorney, we grew that from 6. There's 28 communities in Norfolk County. I always like to say my favorite community is Bellingham. And people say, why is that? And the answer is, well, they vote for me, but they get prosecuted in Worcester County. So I usually say to the people in Bellingham, I love you people. I will never prosecute you. And of course, then someone inevitably says, yeah, but if I go commit a crime in Franklin, well, don't do that, because that's, so. But it's, I think through a quirk in the change in the statute when they're trying to realign some of the courts, just a little bit of a trivia question. People refer to me as the Norfolk County District Attorney, but actually by statute I am the District Attorney of the Norfolk District. That the District Attorney lines don't always align with the county, and Bellingham is an example. And so there are the gentleman on the Cape is he's not the Barnstable County District Attorney, he's the District Attorney of the Cape and Islands District. And in Franklin and Hampshire County, if anybody has been out to the Golden West, I went to UMass, so I happen to know where those two counties are, but we're talking Northampton, Amherst, Greenfield, and North. Those two counties are the Northwest District. And my friend Marion Ryan is the Middlesex District Attorney, but she's actually, I believe her title is the Middle District Attorney. And Essex is the Northern District, so, but Bristol's Bristol, so figure that out. And I think Worcester's Worcester, so. But they, it's Berkshire County is Berkshire. The county is the district. So, but it's just a little quirk, because so they make some changes here and there so they can fit them into the court. So the people in Bellingham go to Milford District Court. So, I've been the district attorney for 12 years. I am running again. I had spent some time in the legislature and I practiced law. I started a law firm in the 80s with a gentleman who's long since retired. There was 3 of us that started the firm. It was called Boyle, Morrissey, and Campo. Boyle's smart. He's retired to Florida, still maintains a presence up here. Campo joined us. It was Boyle, Morrissey, and then we needed affirmative action, so we got an Italian. And so Tony Campo is now a Superior Court judge. He's retired from the practice of law, and he sits in the Superior Court, although they don't let him sit in Norfolk County because I'm here. So, and then there's a guy named Mark Shaughnessy who took over the law firm, and we still, Boyle could keep his name there because he's not in public service. So the law firm is now called Boyle Shaughnessy Law, affectionately known to us as BS Law. So we practice law, and I built a law firm. When they tell me they're much more successful since I left. When I left 12 years ago, there was 35 lawyers. Tony Campo left 5 years ago, and there was 60 lawyers now. There's over 70 lawyers. So financially, I probably left at the right time, but I really like the job. So this is I've been a good fit. I was a civil practitioner for many years, and I provided the tools that district attorneys need for many years. So I enjoy the job, but we're a relatively safe county. And the other part of the thing, we focus on preventable deaths, so overdoses are the biggest problem, and that we try to work with people, the group seniors and others. And the other one that I know it's going to surprise you, it surprised me, but it's motor vehicle deaths. We lose 40 to 50 people a year in a motor vehicle accident, never mind the serious accidents. And you kind of scratch your head and say, how does that happen? And I think part of it is, if you think of Norfolk County, think of the roadway network. I'm old enough to say the Southeast Expressway, but that's Route 93. And you have 95, and you have 24, and Route 3, and you have 495, you have 1A, 109, and then the 27s, all the cross streets, the 139s, you have the Blue Hill, Quincy Shore Drive, Furnace Brook. You have high-speed roads where people, if they're in an accident, it's usually going to cause some significant injury or damage. So we lose a lot of people, high percentage of drug and alcohol related. So we spend a lot of time trying to, prevent that. And one of the things with seniors that if you go into the police station next door, every community in Norfolk County has a drug take-back box. And so if you have medication, the doctors, our friends in the medical industry were telling people that oxycodone and particularly oxycodone, was a miracle drug. It would keep you from, pain and everything else. Well, non-addictive, we all found out that it was not true, that it may have alleviated your pain, but it made you very addicted to what is essentially, if you took the formula for oxycodone and you took the formula for heroin, it's the same drug. There's very little difference. And so if we had a pharmacist on staff for the first few years to help us out get through this, and he used to do a presentation. He used to lay the formulas on top of each other, and with minor differences, it was the same drug. And so, and as we all know, it was very addictive, and the drug, Big Pharma sold us a bill of goods, and some of them are still paying for it now. Probably not enough, because the damage they have done to a whole generation of people has been staggering. But most people, young people, get their first experience taking pain medication through a family member, their own household. And some of it starts, you may have a sports injury in high school, or, we've had people, when you go to sell your house, people go into the house, and if you've had pain medication, it's in your medicine cabinet, they take it. And so we encourage people, obviously, to, no questions asked. You can drop them off if you don't need them. Obviously there is a use for them, appropriate use for them, but they have been significantly abused by people. And then from heroin, if you thought heroin was bad enough, I always used to think that the cheapest drug on the street was heroin. It was, when I was younger, it was $5 a bag in the 60s and early 70s, still $5 a bag, except the heroin is now twice as strong as it was when I was younger, and it's still $5 a bag. But if that wasn't enough, now they have a synthetic drug. They have fentanyl, and which is like 100 times stronger than heroin. And it's strong enough that if you had a salt shaker in your hand, and you went and you got a couple of granules of salt in your hand, and it was fentanyl, could cause you to pass out. You could overdose on it. That's why the police are very careful, always wearing gloves. They carry Narcan. Anybody familiar with Narcan? So naloxone. Narcan is the name that DuPont gives. Naloxone is the drug. And it's been around for 50 or 60 years, and we've all probably had it. If you think of it, if anybody's had any kind of surgery, and they give that surgery, and you're kind of like out in space, and you go, whoa, like, where am I? When they bring you out, they usually give you naloxone. And the simplest answer to that, they used to be able to squirt it in your nostrils because it gets it into your system, or the EMTs are better trained and more experienced. They can actually give you a shot. But the police, everybody carries Narcan. When you started out, the doses now have doubled because the drugs that they're taking are much stronger. So instead of giving someone one dose, they're using 2 or 3 doses on someone to save their lives. And so we've been very successful. We map all the overdoses. We try to work with the families. We try to locate the problem areas. And that's one of the things that the district attorney's office has worked with the local police. So we feed information. We go after the people that are selling and try to get people who have a drug-related issue, an opiate problem, a public health issue, try to get them into counseling. So, but there are other things that affect everybody, and one of them we'll talk a little bit about today, and I'll answer any questions. But we still see scams, and it doesn't matter what your age. It tends to be when we get a little bit older and slower, they think that we're an easier target, and there's some truth to that. I get my Social Security check too, so I understand it. And Gail was telling a story of someone we won't throw under the bus, who I would consider 60-ish, and he gets sucked in. So, and then someone Gail and I know very well, and it's just that it really doesn't matter. They have the old scam where when you're growing up, they used to have the travelers, and I'm not supposed to say gypsies, but that was the old term that you've probably heard. They had travelers, and they would come to your door, and they'd either offer to fix your roof, which didn't need it, and then they take some money for the work and never show up. But my favorite was that they wanted to seal coat your driveway. Yeah. And so they would take motor oil, and it would look great until the first rainstorm. So that still goes on. And you have the grandparent scam. I've had someone call up. Gail kind of likes to torture people that call up and keep them on the phone, because she figures it's less time that they're going to be calling somebody else. But they're out there where they call it phishing. They're out there looking for people who they can make some money off of. But you call up and you say, yeah, Michael, they get your names out, and said yes. And so I'm calling on behalf of your grandson. He's locked up down in South Carolina, and so, oh, geez, he is. And so usually they expect you to say, so which one, or they will blurt out, you have Stephen, and so you give it away, and so. Then they get the hooks into you a little, and they want you to either go get a gift card or send some kind of cash. My favorite answer to that was, fortunately, I knew what it was, and so I pulled a Gale on them and said, "Oh, that's awful." Now, now you have my brother's Patrick, and so I said, "You have Patrick." And yeah, and I said, and he really did that? Oh, yeah, I need your help. I said, I don't like him anyway. You keep him. So they're pretty clever. They spend every day. They're well trained at how to separate you from your money, and it just have to. Even the computer age is wonderful. There's anything you want to know. You can just pick up the phone. I talk to mine all the time. If I want to know, a Bitcoin is. I'll tell one quick Bitcoin story. 1 Bitcoin equals how many U.S. dollars? $19,229.60. So you can ask, 1 euro equals how many U.S. dollars? It's a dollar. It's even. If anyone's going to Europe, now's the time to go. So the dollar is doing well against the pound is down too. So we had a case involving when we arrest someone selling drugs. One of the things we get to do is we actually get to confiscate their ill-gotten gains and profits. Usually cash, sometimes Rolex watches. We've had 3 instances where people had turned houses into grow houses. Basically empty the house out, and they filled it with hydroponics and lighting, and they were growing marijuana. An ounce of marijuana that is probably worth $500 for a good ounce of marijuana these days. So there's a big underground market which they can sell it for $200 or $300 an ounce, and so there's a lot of people still in the marijuana business, in spite of the fact that we have a regulated marijuana industry, and the taxes on marijuana in Massachusetts have actually superseded the tax on alcohol. But when we get to deal with some of the drug dealers, so we've taken 3 houses in 12 years and sold them, taken some cars. But my favorite case was a Bitcoin case. It just resolved itself, so I can talk a little bit about it. I can't tell you how to get there, but the person was in a community and had up on a office warehouse type building, and he was pressing drugs, ecstasy and Molly. They're drugs that you would find in like a Boston club, and they get people high that are out clubbing. And so they were making the drugs, and the postal inspectors picked up on it, and they got the state police involved. They put a camera on one of the telephone wires right even with the window, so they could look in and they could watch them. They could sit in the office and tape them making the drugs. And then they went, and when they saw a delivery, they would go out to the trash, and they'd take the trash out, and at night they'd pull that out, they'd send it out to the lab and have it analyzed what it was. And then the postal inspector became the confidential informant, and she started buying drugs from them. And so we had our claws into them pretty good, and then we had some good evidence. But it turned out that he was selling the drugs on what they referred to as a deep web. And don't tell me, I would tell you that I'm aware that it exists. I can't tell you how you get there other than you need special equipment and browsers. But even like some of the terrorists were using the deep web to communicate, and there's another layer that most of us will never see or get to. But a lot of illicit activity goes on, a lot of child pornography on the deep web. And so people monitor that and go after people. So they found out that he was selling his drugs on the deep web. But he confided into this postal inspector that he wanted to buy this $250,000 car and have it shipped in from California. And so she said, well, geez, my partners are coming in next week. They're flying in. And let me talk to them. I said, maybe, he wanted to sell 62 Bitcoins at the time. It was $4,000 a coin. And she was going to give them $250,000. So you've been in government, you know what this is like. So now we're saying, now what are we going to do? So now we have to come up with $250,000. So I told the troopers, we came up with 100. I had to sign my life away to do that. I told them, if anything happens, there'll be a murder. I'm going to kill you all. So so they also the postal inspectors came up with $250,000, and they show up at a hotel room on Route 1 at the end of the runway in Norwood. And so I was afraid that we were going to have to fly someone from like Plymouth to Norwood and have them get off a plane or something. But so they weren't that smart. So they got there the day before, and they wired the room and had the place surrounded. And so they refer to the Bitcoin and what's in the computer and as the wallet. So the computer is the wallet. So he opened the wallet. They actually flew someone in from Chicago from the postal inspectors who understood Bitcoin. And when he opened it up, he transferred 1 Bitcoin. So $4,000 and over. And so he saw the money, everything's good. So then they grabbed his computer and they cleaned it out. So the case just resolved at the end of July. And if anybody follows Bitcoin, if I can't see it, I can't touch it, I'm not with it. So, but if we're all stupid enough that we should have bought it at like $300 or $400 because it went to $68,000 like a year ago. So I think they finally sold it off, and when they sold it off, they had to get a judge's order in the federal courts to sell it off. They sold it off. I think it was like $22,000 a coin. So that money gets divided up by the federal government, and we get a share. And so I pay for programs and communities, some of our drug prevention programs and some of the equipment that we buy for the troopers, some of the counseling programs. When we arrest someone, we have a contract with Bay State Counseling that we send them to try to get help. And we gave grants to numerous communities. Mental health has been a big issue since COVID has hit. It's really come to the forefront because people couldn't get out and they couldn't interact with people, and they were left alone. And some of you, I had the experience of my daughter and son-in-law were working. They have 2 kids and trying to find daycare. Fortunately, my wife is retired, but she was the de facto daycare provider for a good long time because there was no place to send the kids. So hanging around with my wife would cause anybody to be crazy. That's why I'm still working. So don't tell her I said that. It's probably on tape, so I'm probably too late now. But it's just, but I saw that having no interaction with the kids was really hard. That my granddaughter starts school tomorrow, so I pity the kindergarten teacher at the Squantum School. But and there's a 2-year-old. So you think about the young kids. It was hard on them, harder on older people that couldn't get out. And family members. Those either may have someone in a nursing home or hospitalized. It was awful. My daughter had a baby in the midst of COVID, so. My son-in-law was able to go in, but no one could see them for weeks on end. So it caused a lot of strain. So we've spent some money on trying to get some help and counseling. But the old scams don't go away. Sorry to say, and they keep coming after you. Gail had a couple of handouts that even recent ones. There's a utility scam, right, Gail? That they come and they tried to tell you that they were switching off your power and. So that's out there again, and they come to you do it. That's not true. And there's the IRS scam. Listen, if the IRS wants you, trust me, they're going to find you. But they're suggesting like Social Security, you can pay for your Social Security card. It's not a lot of money, but they're still taking your money. And anytime you give up information, I usually just tell people that if it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Or take the information down. Don't give them any of your information. Take their information and say, geez, and even if you're not married, and say, geez, my husband or my wife, I had to talk to my wife. She handles all that stuff. I talk to her, don't tell them anything. Just let me take your number down. And so, get as much information as you can from them, because sadly, when they get access to information, and especially if it includes your bank account, it can be very, very painful. And a lot of this money is not staying in this country. It's heading out of the country. It's going to parts of Africa and Eastern Europe in particular, Far East. And so our chances of getting it are very, very slim. So it's just that. And the other thing that happens is people often feel embarrassed to come forward. And I would just have to urge you that if you have any questions, if you don't want to talk to a relative, call the police and ask them, is this true? Because they'd rather talk to you at the front end than at the back end when they've already parted ways with your money. But anybody asking you, like when they, can you send some money to get your grandson out of prison? He has to be bailed out and go get gift cards. Who does that? And then they get the gift card. They want to give the numbers in the back, and then they're going to go online and they're going to order that. Now, no matter how hard you try, I mean, probably, I want to say a dozen years ago, somehow my credit card stopped coming to the house, and I was waiting for the bill, and I contacted the people, and they said, no, you moved to New York. And I said, I haven't been in New York in 5 years. And so they said, can you tell me what the charges are? And I think I had like a $15,000 credit limit. There was $12,000 worth of Apple computer charged in an Apple store up on the Hudson someplace up by Austin, New York. And I said, that's not me, So they're able to get the film and stuff, but even then, trying to identify it is very hard. So, but it happens, and I didn't do anything, so that meant someone along the way had to take my card. When you're giving your card at a restaurant stuff, that can happen to you as well. So I just tell people to pay close attention to their bills, but don't give anybody any information. Social Security, bank accounts, forget it. And if you really have to do that, then you get the number and you make the call so that you know who you are talking to, because you're the person who's developing the source. But so what was the other one, Gail, that came out to? It was
the grandparent scam and then the man that lost the money to the text message, the Bank of America.
Stand up,
Yes.
yeah. So Gail Bellotti, sorry to say, works for the district attorney, and she does a lot of my community outreach work, and she's had to tolerate me. Besides doing this, she also keeps me straight, my schedule as well. But so we try to get out. One of the things, we think education and prevention are important parts of the job. Although, as I said to you, I have 65 really good attorneys who are willing to lock people up when they have to. So, and we did bring some other stuff. I jokingly refer to it as swag, but it's actually little things that make a difference. Some of you have cameras on your computer, that little eye that. So this is a little stick-on that you can slide over the. Some of the computers have a little lever that you can shut off the lens, but some people don't want anybody looking over their shoulder. They want to make sure there's a little slide that you can put over so they can't copy you. And then this is an RFID protected card, so the magnetic strip. They actually even have equipment that they can clone your credit card. I mean, it's, you hear them sometimes when you put your card into a machine. Sometimes they have a machine that will clone the information on the machine. I mean, as good as we are and as quick as we try to catch up with them, they're always moving. And so this is just a simple cover that would protect a bank card, like I'd say like a debit card or a credit card. And we bought a bunch of those. And for those of you that are still into paper like me, although I do have my vaccine information on my phone, but this is actually like a vaccine passport. So and keep that card. Some people, instead of having the card get crushed and mangled in your pocket or your wallet or your purse, this will help as well. And of course, there's nail files. I refer to that as my get out of jail free card. Some of you will get that. So it's good for the bars, but it's also So, but we do take some of the worst calls we get are people who have been scammed. It gets to us because the local police. We always tell talk to the people at the senior center, talk to the local police, because once the word gets out, the person, you may have been the victim, but you can also help your friends from also not suffering the same fate. And I'll let Gail talk. There's a few more books and.
We brought some files of life. I'm sure you probably all have these on your fridge, I hope. But these ones are actually, the inserts are updated, and it includes COVID information and other vaccine information. So if you don't have an updated one, I can give you the inserts. But you really should have one of these on your refrigerator. Is the very first thing that first responders look for, is the file of life on your refrigerator. So I have those, and if I don't have enough, I think I dropped some off a couple of weeks ago here. So, and I brought, these are called Money Smart for Older Adults. This is a fantastic book. It's not just about how to good with your money. It also includes a lot of information about scams, really kind of the more common scams, and identity theft. And it has a lot of resources if you do ever give up any of your personal information or you become a victim of a scam or identity theft. And there's quizzes in the back. Once you go through it, you can pass it along to somebody else. This is just a really great book to have. So I brought those and some other information, but this is probably the most important thing. This is a list of a lot of federal and state agencies and other phone numbers. That's good to have. You can hang this on your refrigerator. If you were to get a phone call, there's just too many scams to list them, but so if you were to get an IRS call, for instance, the number here, you can just take the number that they give you, don't call it back, and you can actually call the IRS and say, listen, I received this phone call. And yes.
The IRS, banks, everybody shouldn't be calling.
Absolutely.
No, they shouldn't be. So they won't call you. Unless you initiate a phone call, they're not going to call you. Social Security is not going to call you.
I just got a letter from the DOR in Massachusetts saying someone's trying to do a circuit breaker on my last year's income tax.
Yeah, that's.
And I was like, I don't even file income tax. You didn't.
I can get a top bunk though.
Well, actually, my daughter-in-law B works for you. So, anyways, they sent me a letter, and I called them, and it's sure enough, this person was trying to get a 1700 circuit breaker off my, and other, my.
Yeah, no, well, something like that, if you're getting something that looks official, then ideally, you either call the number on the alternative, then develop your own number, call up and say, listen, I received this mailing from the Department of Revenue. Is this something you would have sent out? Who do I talk to? But
Well, I did do that.
fine.
And then 2 weeks later, I got something from the IRS, same thing. And I have just filled out all the paperwork, got my Equifax, and did all that. And now I'm having my Equifax wanted me, but I used to be a banker, so I was at the beginning of all the frauds.
I locked down one of the things you can do is you can get a free credit report every year.
Yep.
But I locked down my credit after they stole my ID. I just locked down the credit.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
And so they only release it when I authorize them to release it.
Yeah, the latest one is the USPS, very official.
Well, she just said the United States Postal Service, and it looks very official. And I have to say, just because it looks official does not mean that it is.
Say you have a package to
They
pick
have-
up and it's overweight, you owe us $1.39.
They're very savvy.
$1.39 today.
Right.
Yeah,
2 days later.
yeah. They can take a logo and attach it to anything. They can put it into an email. They can put it on a letter. They can.
And they can spoof a phone.
They.
They can
Yep.
take my phone number and say, this is the calling from the district attorney's office, and it would be the district attorney's office number, but it wouldn't be us.
Yeah.
So I mean, the technology and the things they can do, it just means you have to be more aware. Sorry to say. I mean, with technology, it's been great, but also there's a downside to it too, because if you think about, not that I want to get overly political, but I think that there's a lot of information on the web that it's just not true or verified. And it doesn't matter whether you're liberal or conservative or moderate, it's just a lot of people read it on the web and they think it's true. And I think that has hurt a lot of us, because it's hard for people to ascertain what is true and what is not. And what they believe sometimes is not verified. And I think I think it's hurt the country as a whole, sorry to say.
He mentioned the credit. Oh, sorry. The credit reports, and that is the most effective way to spot any kind of red flag for identity theft, human error. You're entitled to 3 a year, one from each of the credit reporting bureaus: Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Actually, Equifax, you can get more now because of the breach from 2017. So I encourage you to do that, and you can spread it out over the course of a year. order one every few months, and really monitor it. Anything that doesn't look right, you just pick up the phone and call. But that is the best way to identify any kind of identity theft, fraud, or human error.
There's
And
also still large breaches of data too, because I just got a mailing yesterday, which I took a quick look at it, and I have it with me so I can read it tonight, that I'm part of a larger breach someplace. So I don't know whether it's a hospital record, where they get in, or, what it is, but I'm gonna find out tonight. So it didn't look like much. I thought it was some kind of bill collector, the notice, but it was a notice they were required to send me because I am one of the victims, and I'm sure I'm part of thousands of victims, so that, the data, is protecting data it's obviously created a whole industry of people who just do that. And we undergo training in the district attorney's office. Now, they have ransomware. Some people have heard about that if we download the wrong email and someone opens it up, they can affect the entire system. They can shut us down. So I already took my training. I don't know if you've taken yours, but we have to go through training. You have to pass a test. And then the state actually tests you. I passed in August. That they sent an email. It was pretty good looking. I had me going for a minute. So I called the IT guy and I said, listen, I'm not opening this, but this looks like a bunch of baloney. And he said, you passed. But it was it got me thinking. It was one of those things. But if someone clicks on it now, I will fess up that we did have some people in the office who didn't pass, and they've all been identified. They're all going for retraining. So now they're going to pay attention. So they opened the wrong thing, and so we try to be cautious. I'm not telling you that we're perfect, but it's just the same is true at home. You also want to be, and when they get their closet, they want you to pay. So they can bring you to. A friend of mine owned an engineering business, and he paid like $5,000 to free up his accounts. And then there's no guarantee they're going to unfreeze it, or there's no guarantee that you're not going to be an easy mark in the future. So it's it's created a whole set of cyber criminals out there. But protecting your ID, and that's really just wanted to tell you some simple rules. And you are right. The IRS and the banks, they won't,
But if you do give your information, whether it's hacked or you give it over the phone thinking that you're giving it to a legitimate caller, or however you may give your social security number, that very sensitive, personal, identifying information, you can't get it back once you give it. So then you have to be proactive. Then you have to protect yourself. So there's on here, I don't have my glasses on so I can't see it, but you can go on to My SSA. You want to set up an account. You should do it anyways. I did it for my husband and I. You set up an account before someone else can do that. You want to I have a book here also. I don't have many, but I think I actually dropped some of these off before too. This is recovery from identity theft, and it tells you the steps that you can take. So you want to just make sure that you notify once if you were to give out that information.
Financial institution right away.
Right, your credit cards, your banks. You want to notify the credit reporting bureaus, make sure there's nothing on there. You can freeze or lock your credit report. I know the DA did that. You have to remember your PIN number. Didn't you forget it?
It's so long they had to make sure it was me, and they gave me a new PIN number.
So you want to make sure that if you were to lock your credit, it's very simple too. All you have to do is unlock it. You have to remember that PIN number, and you can unlock it when you want to open a new line of credit. But that prevents anyone from being able to access your credit. And if
Years ago, and then I went to buy a car,
So what?
and it said my credit was locked, and I'm like, what? I
Yeah.
forgot.
as long as you remember the PIN.
So don't worry. When they want to sell you the car, which is what happened, they'll find a way to help you get your PIN number and get it unlocked. So and they only unlock it to make access so they can run your credit so you can buy a car. So it's only open for like 48 hours and then it's closed back down.
Yes.
This morning I got one from my Amazon card has been stopped, and there's the whole thing to hit. I just deleted it.
Was it a text message?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she just,
But I don't even answer my landline unless
I
I
know.
know the
Oh, I
number.
let it.
I don't answer anything.
She
I
just-
check to see if there's a message from my friends.
So now you're showing us your age. I still have a landline,
I
so
do.
I do too.
none of our kids have them,
I
no.
do not use it.
As she said, it's a good idea, just not even to answer the phone. If you don't recognize the caller as a family member or friend, let it go to voicemail and never call back a number that's either on your caller ID or left in a voicemail. Make sure you get the correct number to call back, and you can use this list to do so. Even if you were to go online and Google it, you may end up with a scam phone number. So if you get a call and they say they're the IRS or your bank or your utility company, whatever it is, and they leave a phone number or you take it off the caller ID, you might just be calling back the scammer not knowing that. So you want to make sure you get the correct number. You want to take the steps to make sure. And if you aren't sure, you can call the senior center. They'll help you. You can call the police. They will help you. But you just want to remember those spoofing, that they can spoof any number. And they might be overseas and they can have it be a local number. It will look right. It may have the correct number. They're one step ahead. So you just have to try to just empower yourself with knowledge. Oh, sorry. Who had a question? Oh, sorry.
The other day, I was sitting there, I was watching TV and my phone rang, so I looked to see who was calling. I was calling myself.
Right.
It was my phone
Yeah,
number
I've
that
heard that
came
too.
on. And then it came on, a voice was saying to me that if I didn't pay them a certain amount of money by 4 o'clock, the sheriff was gonna come and arrest me. I so wanted to answer that phone and say, well, seeing it's 4 o'clock, it's almost near happy hour. Can I make jeans or can I get the rest? But anyway, I won't have to pay any bills.
Due respect to Michael Bly, the former sheriff, he didn't arrest anybody.
That's true. No legitimate government agency or law enforcement agency or business will ever ask for payment by a gift card, or they will not send somebody to your house to pick up cash. They won't ask you to put it in a paper bag or in a magazine or something. They will not threaten you with arrest, and they won't give you a deadline of 24 hours or a few hours or all those tactics that scammers use. They use those to instill a sense of fear and urgency or excitement. If they're saying that you won something, they want you to get excited and not think rationally. So
Yeah, we tell you to take a deep breath, and there's
Yeah.
nothing that anybody's asking for that anybody needs right away.
Right.
If you think about it, I mean, really, what is there that couldn't wait a day or two? And if it was that important, trust me, the person on the other end of the line is someone you're gonna know. If someone needed money that bad, it's gonna be someone you recognize.
Somebody you really know.
yes.
Almost every day in my internet, I get a thing saying that I've got a package waiting or
Yeah.
something. whatever.
That's a
I
common
just
one.
keep Fishing.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah. Spam. Yes.
I have a question about another kind of fraud. This is an event that happened about 7 weeks ago, where I received an email from my credit card company telling me that that morning there had been an attempt to charge $200 to my credit card at a gas station in Norwood. So I called the credit card company and said it wasn't me and it wasn't my wife, because she has an identical card with the same number but with her name on it. So I asked for more information. They referred me through to the fraud department. The fraud department checked out the records and says, yes, it looks like this was an attempt at a fraudulent transaction. So what we will do is cancel your card and issue a new card. That way, whoever got hold of your information can't use it again. So as of now, that account is closed. Everything's going to be transferred over to the new card number. So then I got to thinking, well, there's this gas station in Norwood that attempted to process a $200 charge on my credit card. it's unusual to pay $200 for gas. So I think I'll call the gas station and ask if there's some way they can check as to what happened. They just laughed at me and said, well, it didn't go through, so what's your problem? So I thought afterwards, probably too late to do anything about it. Should I really have called the Norwood police?
Probably.
And said there's been an attempt to charge to my card at this particular gas station. It's even down to the precise time that the attempt was made. And
It wouldn't
quite early
hurt.
in the morning.
Well, it may, with all the surveillance is out there, and, I mean, I look around the room here, there's probably besides the cameras, but I suspect that there's other surveillance activity here in this room that for security reasons outside the building and the police station. And as I said to you, when we go to a crime scene, one of the first things we look at, who has a Ring doorbell in the neighborhood? And who has security? I mean, a lot of people have a lot of security. Thankfully, I'm the last house on a dead-end street, and my neighbor, he has security. You can't get down the street without anybody figuring out who it is. So, and I have a Ring doorbell, and so that it all helps. But if I could get a hold of the turkey that keeps, sleeping above my car, I'd like to strangle him. So.
But the other thing is you may find if you call the police, they may say, we've had several other calls on this, so that might help.
Could be the same. Could be the same person. The question.
That could also be by one of those what the district attorney was talking about earlier, the fraudulent card readers that they put over ATMs, gas, wherever you could swipe your card, and they look authentic, they fit perfect. So that's why they always say give it a little jiggle if it feels, if it doesn't look right, or if it's loose. Go to a different pump at the gas station, go to a different ATM. They're so sophisticated with this. They actually have what's called skimmers that they can keep in their pockets, very small. All they have to do is walk by you.
Which is why we use the.
All your information, which is why these RFID protector sleeves are so important to use. And that could have happened to you too. If you had your card and your wife had your card, that somebody could have used a skimmer.
That was actually the first mistake that you and I made. We gave our wives the card. I'm in the same boat.
What happened to me, I probably would have got my Irish up, and I probably would have gone down to the gas station.
Well, the problem though is, suppose it was the gas station. It's not. I mean, so you don't know what you're getting into either, which is why the police will look at it, and most of the departments here are very capable and competent. They'll go follow up, and you don't have to get that hands-on. So there's a question in the middle.
I got it from Dick's Sporting Goods. Never played sports in my life.
I was wondering, there doesn't seem to be any affirmative action to try to stop this. Everybody in the audience has gotten one maybe once a week, and yet there's no apparent effort by any law enforcement to try to stop it or to follow up on it and find out where these things are coming from, whether it's Africa or
Well, there's the resources you need. Well, there's two things. Part of it is education, which is why we're here today, because we think that's the front line of defense, is trying to tell people as much as you can about the problem and just explain what we see and hear. And that's why we ask you to report it to local police, because we'll get back to the senior center and they'll put it in their newsletter, and then people find out about what the.
is there a bureau of
Well, the FBI, I mean, big stuff. The problem is there is so much of it, and the amount of money that it's massive. And if you think about it, they're driving the cost of goods and services up because they're taking the numbers and whatever it is, and they're going to Amazon or they're going into Home Depot, and they're taking goods and services. And
our age who is the victim?
it's you guys tend to be a little bit more susceptible, but it's all of us that are the victims, because they're getting everybody's credit card. It doesn't matter your age, and eventually, I don't know whether or not the technology is going to end up on your phone. Whether that's going to be the end all. I mean, they tell me in China that there's very little hand-to-hand exchange of money. Everything is on a phone. I've not been to China and have no desire to go, but they tell me that's the direction some people are going. So I just, it gets back to even the politics. I mean, what you see about on the web, how do you stop people from putting stuff that's not truthful? You know, then you get into the First Amendment, and some people, well, I thought it was truthful. You pass on something. You know, if I'm a firm believer, if you say something like you mean it and you repeat it 6 times, it's true. And think about it. I mean, how often does that happen these days? And I mean, how do you stop that? And it's just, I personally think that as great as the internet is, and I still make my kids, you know, I don't want a text message. You want to talk to me, come see me or call me. And so, you know, it's great. If you can't do that, okay, I'll accept, but I'm not talking to you by text. You know,
I
and
think a lot of it is gaslighting. Gaslighting.
yeah,
You put it on 6 times,
yep.
and you're gonna vote for that guy. They're gaslighting people.
Well, I went to the World's Fair in 1960 in New York, and I went to they had the telephone company had a phone on the wall with a little TV in it, and someday I was going to get someday you're going to be able to get to see the person on the other end of the phone, and so I mean now with FaceTime, you know, hello, you know, so technology has come a long way, and I don't know that there's an easy answer. We try to go after the people, but we have to tell you, trying to chase someone. You know, that in some of the cases, you know, I go back to, we have an old murder case in Randolph, and the person had fled the jurisdiction, and they're in Cape Verde, and Cape Verde does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. So one of the Randolph police officers, who is of Cape Verdean descent, you know, goes and visits relatives, and he's walking around the main island, and who does he see but the murderer? I mean, so how do you stop that? Down back, way down back?
We addressed the, once again, the gentleman's question about, you know, what do we do to this inundation of spam calls and so forth. It was, I thought that I had heard that
You could register.
major telecom companies were supposed to do something about the robocalls and the.
So there, my daughter, for instance, she has T-Mobile. If you call T-Mobile, actually for free, you can sign up, and it'll tell you, it'll warn you that this could be a spam call. So if you answer it, you can cut back on the.
Why hasn't our federal government insisted that the telecom companies do more? They know that they're spam calls.
Well, like everything else, they.
I've gotten that message too.
Well, I got the one. If they call me one more time about Medicare, I'm going to strangle them. You know that I'm still employed. I have insurance. You know, hello. And I mean, I can't tell you. And the same people keep calling. I said, I'm employed. Leave me alone. And I should know better than to pick up some of the numbers, but they're local numbers. And I figured someone that knows me, because I don't give my number out that often. And so, I mean, I'm with you on that. As far as I took care of the phone calls at home, and everything goes to an answering machine. And sorry to say that's, you know, not the solution to the problem, but I think. I know they've kicked it around. I don't know the answer, but I'm with you, because we all get the same calls you get. Sorry to say, and it's annoying. They do. I think. I hate to admit this, and it is an election year, but I think in the past they have exempted political calls from you know, shocking as it is.
Just so you know, you can contact your
Do not call.
provider and ask for, what do you offer me for protection from these calls? Ask what they offer. I know this isn't really an answer to your question, but there's also, you can go on to Nomorobo.
Yeah.
Nomoro.
Been there, done it, also called the do not call other numbers.
So the do not call registry, federal and state.
Doesn't work.
It will.
No.
It doesn't see. It will actually reduce what you receive, but
The numbers of spam calls must
I know.
be
It is.
Believe me,
It's all mechanical. It's all they put it in a machine, and they can call hundreds of calls. When someone is trying to get your money, the people that are sitting in Eastern Europe or sitting in Africa, they basically dial a number of phones at one time, and when someone picks up, they pick up. And you ever notice how there's like a delay? Well, they're sending out hundreds and hundreds of calls until so they're basically phishing is the term, and they're looking for someone to pick it up, and it's I'm not sure we have an easy answer. This is one of the reasons why we talk about it, just to let you know that it's out there, and somebody have to grin it. Yeah, and grin it. But no, but if they're reeling you in, you got to let the police know so we can let other people know and try to stop it or recover your money. But we wanted to make sure that one of the things, it's very rare that we ever get your money back. It happens, but it's
I think everyone
it's rare.
shares your frustration too. Like, why can't they stop this? One of the problems is technology is just so they take numbers from a pool of available numbers. If you notice, scam callers, when they leave a phone number, if you were to call that number the next day,
Nope,
it doesn't
gone.
work because they just change the number that quick. So technology is a huge part of the biggest part of this, really, because they could just change their number.
Okay, who's calling us all right now? Who's doing this?
Everybody's getting scam calls.
I blocked
This is-
Yeah, Verizon lets you block them.
my can on my phone,
Verizon
Yeah.
on
blocks
my
them.
landline. I've got about 400 blocks on it.
So,
I get less.
so just out of curiosity, everybody's phone was ringing a minute ago. So what was it?
They hear you, they're listening.
Oh,
So I just another question. Wait a minute, you got to listen up a second just so I can hear it.
I'm thinking about two things that you have said to us. One, we are the first line of defense.
Absolutely.
Totally agree with that it's a matter for us to spot what's going on and prevent it from going further. You've also mentioned that you and the people that work with you are trained in handling problems, particularly related to computers. But
Well, when we catch them, when?
subject of being the first line of defense is something in which we could be trained instead of just leaving us to work with our common sense.
The comment was that, and I have suggested we were all the first line of defense. And the fact you're here today, you're listening, and you should, obviously realize that. But after, the next question is then what? And so you generally only get involved when asked. As I said to you, in the district attorney's office, we focus on murders, but we provide support to the local police departments. I do have a forensic computer laboratory that can download phones and computers, but you have to identify that person. Getting to that next step, it usually leads you to someone out of the country, and that's been the biggest problem. Is that most of these people are not here. When they are here in this country, and we can track them down, and we subpoena records, and we go to the phone companies. Now, the other.
I don't think you're understanding me. I'm asking, why can't we, the general public, be trained in how to spot that there's a scam which is coming at us?
Well, we tried to use the senior newsletters to let people know what's out there. Try to use the police department. The local papers have pretty much disappeared, sorry to say.
The way that you're trained?
Well, I'm trained. I trust the internet and put stuff out on the net to let people.
You said you were trained and then you were tested.
Oh, so when I said that I was trained in the district attorney's office and the state computer system, they don't want viruses to come into the system. And so they go through a series of training to recognize what phishing is and what could be out of sorts. Answer a quiz. You take multiple part tests, and you have to answer the quiz and pass it. Otherwise, you're still training. And then
Training available for us. We have the same.
it's an interesting question. I'll ask that question. I don't know the answer as far as like if the senior center wanted to offer training for people here on that line, because you can do it at home. You want to do it at home and take the test. And then you want them to test you on it. Well, the business obviously is concerned about their own welfare. In our case, it's records. We don't have a lot of money. It's all people's records. But I'll follow up on that. That's an interesting question. There's a question down back. You have a question?
I do. I have two actually. I'm sorry.
Gail.
She started to mention something about the Bank of America. She was gonna tell us.
Yeah.
about it, and she didn't.
She said that's.
That's my first thing. And the second thing is, if you have a credit card, say you go out to dinner,
Yes,
and you
I have a
hand your
post-it
waiter
note on top of it.
Yes.
is that
So no one can look
okay to
in.
do? And then obviously he takes your credit card and he goes in the back room and runs it and then comes back.
It's
Not do that.
well, I guess it's that's you don't have a choice, right? Either bring cash with you, or sometimes they have the small handheld device to the table, and they want you to punch in a code. I mean, if you have any doubts, I wouldn't be going to that restaurant. But I mean, it's a it's you won't know whether or not you've been a victim until you get a call from the credit card company. And if you're going to travel, let them know because they'll shut you off.
My credit card tells
So
me so much charges.
if I know that some of you want to get, yeah. If you know who you're talking to, you give it to them. Otherwise, you're not getting the purchase. If you don't.
My credit card tells me you purchase it.
So there's some handouts on the Bank of America up here and some other documents. And take a card with you. I know that you've been patient with us, so we were told we'd keep you about an hour. But thank you all for coming.